Hi everyone. So on this video, I'm going to help you understand why it makes sense to bulk buy and capital rotate. This strategy is going to generate fairly good alpha, right? I'm quite confident about that. Recently, I posted about it on my YouTube member community. This is a post that you can see roughly 1.5 months back. Then the Nifty had fallen. So I'll just show it to you from here. So that was a time when Nifty had fallen by roughly 16%. And since then, it has gone up by roughly 7%. So when Nifty had fallen by more than 15%, so 15% correction pay, I had invested close to 5 CR. Now at this support level, I had sold this specific trade of 5 CR and pocketed roughly 38 lakhs of profit on short-term basis. Now you'll say, are you a trader? The answer is absolutely not. I am an investor. But even as an investor, I have to be cognizant about the fact that what type of market we are likely to witness in the future. For example, and let me just zoom out a little bit, I have been constantly saying that we will be in a rotational market or a market where you have to capital rotate. And this is a sideways market. So let me quickly explain you the concept of sideways market, and then I'll explain like some of the key points. So for example, here you will see from October 21 till roughly June of 23. So this was roughly 2 years. The market was sideways, this first phase, right? Now, then what happened? Then this was phase 2. The market went up. This was the uptrending market. And then this was phase 3, which was a downtrending market. Now, what would be the fourth phase? Now, some of you would say that, okay, you know what? The market will go up. It will trend up like this, right? So this is one possibility. Some of you would say that, okay, it is going to trend like this. It will be a sideways market. Some of you would say that, okay, this is like going to be a correction market. Now, any of these three scenarios can play out. I, as an investor, am entitled to my viewpoint. And my viewpoint is very simple, that we are going to be in a sideways market. So I expect the market to be something like this. Now, what could happen is that, see, this is one possibility, this blue line, right? The second way the market could go sideways is that it can go sideways in a much bigger fashion, right? So it can go in a much more volatile way, right? This could be the second way. So this is like a possibility that I'm thinking that some variant of this blue or green might happen. And this will be a sideways market. Natural question comes, and the second key question comes that, okay, why do you think this will be a sideways market? Very simple, that for example, if you consider and try to assess whether the Indian markets right now are fairly valued or not, that will give you a sense whether the markets are going to go in a bullish uptrend, bearish downtrend. So let's study this data very quickly. So for example, if you study the data on pre-COVID basis, right? So this is a 5-year viewpoint. And usually whenever we are investing in the market, we will keep 3 to 5-year viewpoint. So let's study the market from here. And what you would notice is that the market right now is at 80%. Okay, so every 6 years, the market doubles, right? This is a usual math, which amounts to like roughly 12 to 13% CAGR. Okay, so if the market is compounded at roughly or compounding at roughly 13%, then in 6 years time, it will double. So if we study pre-COVID to now, the market is almost 80% up, right? So ideally, this range should be like 20% range, right? So that's what I'm expecting over the next 1 year. This is the baseline around which I am basing my analysis, right? And therefore, whatever strategies I'm going to suggest now, it is based on that, right? If you are someone who is like extremely bearish, then this video might not be very useful for you. I remain cautiously optimistic. I believe that the market is still going to trend upwards, but it will modulate in a range. Therefore, SIPing is not the best strategy. You have to learn how to bulk buy, how to bulk sell, rotate capital to undervalued, overvalued assets. So invest in undervalued and take money out of overvalued. Okay. Now, on that note, let me now come that many of you would say that, okay, you know what? You spoke about like Nifty 50. You booked your profits. Where you're rotating your capital next and why, right? Now, I would highly encourage you to join my YouTube member community. I explain everything fundamentally because you will listen to these public videos and you might not get the entire context. So on YouTube member community, I come on real-time basis. I explain whatever is happening in the market in a very sharp manner. Try it for like 2-3 months. You yourself will be able to see the difference. If you don't enjoy it, it just costs like 150, 160 rupees. You cut your membership and move on, right? So not that big a deal. So try it out for 3 months. You yourself will see the change. Work with an open mind. Hear other people's viewpoint also. Okay. So on that note, let me just quickly explain where I am rotating my capital next. So I'll explain 3 critical assets. So the first key asset is that I'm rotating capital to private banks, right? And here you will see, and I will explain it, right? That why it kind of makes sense to rotate capital on private banks. So here you will see, and what you will see is, let me just zoom it out, that if you consider something around this phase, right? So this was 2019, right? So from 2019, if you consider private bank all the way till this point, 2022. So there was a roughly 3.5 years of sideways market on private banks. Since then, it is following this channel, right? This channel it is following. Right now, where is this private bank ETF? If we just judge it technically, so it is roughly, and I have cleared this image so you can see it more sharply, right? So this is where we are. Now, how much gains can be pocketed here? Well, very simple, that if we just stretch this, there is roughly a 20% gain to come on private bank ETF. Now, is this guaranteed? Can I write it on a stamp paper and give it to you? Absolutely not. You have to be sensible in terms of how you build position, how you cut positions, how to understand fundamentals. If it changes, for example, many a times the channel breakdown happens. Okay. So then what do you do in such situations? So as an investor, we need to be prepared for every circumstance. The baseline circumstance on private bank ETF tells us that there is a potential of 21% gain. Now, some weird people come like on YouTube, they'll start bashing, you know what, you gave like, you talked about like private bank will go like 21%. Then it fell by like 1% in like, 2 days or whatever. See, that's absolute short term. I can't comment on that. But the data tells us that, hey, this is likely to happen, right? And even if we do fundamental analysis of banking stocks, for example, HDFC Bank, Kotak Mahindra Bank, ICICI, Axis, one could argue that private banks right now haven't gone into a rally. I'm not talking about public banks like SBI has gone into a rally. We pocketed that. PNB, we booked like 100% profits, etc., etc. But when it comes to large private banks, they have largely underperformed the market. So there is a good chance that sector rotation will happen here. Okay. So I'm gearing my portfolio towards that. That's one asset that I'm buying. Now, what is it that second I'm doing, right? So second, I am buying US stocks. Now, why am I buying US stocks? Well, very simple. So 2-3 points there. That number one, like it or not, Trump, when it comes to the US, is doing solid work. Okay. Now, many would disagree. You know what? India, they have put like tariff. Tariff will kill like inflation in the economy in the US. See, if you study like US government's action in conjunction with the actions of the US Fed this year has been extremely focused on bringing inflation down. Their primary concern is inflation. Donald Trump is figuring out how to accelerate growth. So there are 2-3 macro moves that Donald Trump has made. Please listen this with an open mind. Then only you will understand this. Number one, the debt in the US is close to $35-36 trillion. So around there is debt. The interest repayment every year is $2 trillion in interest repayment. Now, US government does not make that much money. So what is Donald Trump doing? He's doing two things. Number one, he's increasing revenues. How? By bringing in tariffs. That, for example, if let's say hypothetically, up until now, Chinese products were being imported into the US, they were paying like 10% tax. Now that tax has been increased to 15%. So US in the short term will undertake more tax collection. This is one. Second, he is decreasing expenses. So revenues minus expense is equal to profit. So US government needs to make that. So they are increasing revenues and they are bringing down expenses. How are they bringing down expenses? So Donald Trump's plan is to reduce expenses by $1 trillion. How will he do that? He's already on that path. For example, Elon Musk, Doge, right? So which is the government efficiency body that they have instituted. They are firing people left, right, and center. Running a bloated government is the most expensive thing, most useless thing. Okay. So many like government people just drawing salary and not doing any work. That's wastage that you see in India also, in the US also. So Donald Trump is like after those people and he's doing it. Okay. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump or anything. I'm just telling you what policy is he instituting. How is he increasing revenues more? By bringing in that US citizenship angle, right? That you can buy a US golden card, right? So you pay like $1 million or $5 million is the ticket size, I think. So you pay that, you become like a US citizen or you are on a pathway to doing that. So some people will buy that. That's increase in government revenues in the US. So a lot of solid work or groundwork has been done in the US already. I will make a separate video on this topic if you guys are interested. But to cut the long story short, out of like the top 5-7 economies, we could categorically see that Donald Trump is making a lot of contrarian moves, which most people would not agree with. But if you step back and see, he is pro business. Why? Because his businesses are also on the line. So he's cutting like taxes, which is always good for an economy, that if you cut taxes, it brings us more business activity. More businesses will be set up in the US. So on a 5-10 year trajectory, I feel the US is a very solid market. Short term, can it go down? Yes, it can go down by like 20% also, right? I mean, that's not something that I can comment on a short term basis. But long term, if you're investing, US market is absolutely solid. Okay. Now, I do run a US stock investing community. I am putting a lot of money in the US. Almost 50-60% of my portfolio will be put in the US now. Why? Because structurally, it looks a very solid economy. US Bitcoin reserve, etc., etc. A lot of like innovative work happening. If you consider whatever like innovation is happening in artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, solid. Okay, so there are a lot of companies, right, which are available at a discount. So let me just quickly speak about Google, for example. Now, this is not a recommendation that you buy Google. I'm just using it as an example. Again, using it as an example. I'm not saying that you go and buy Google, right? So I'll just quickly show you, right? So here is Google, right? And from its peak, right, what would you notice? So you would notice that Google has fallen by how much? Google has fallen by 20%. Okay. That's one. Second, so if you check the trend, so what is the trend line that we can draw? So we can draw something like this. So this is already broken this trading channel, right? So it kind of makes sense to figure out some good fundamentally strong stocks, and a lot of good fundamentally strong stocks are there in the US where buying can take place, or you should start at least looking to build portfolio. The only complaint that I have with the US market is that the US index hasn't fallen much, so it's slightly overvalued. So there is likely to be an index correction on the US, but individual stocks, it might be a great time to start buying some. Okay. So this is what I would say, or at least have like cash reserves in the US. Indian market, somewhat fairly valued. Okay. This is two. Third, what I would say is that in India, something like NSE recently opened up in the unlisted space, right? Now, unlisted space. What is unlisted space? Why you should buy in unlisted space? What are the challenges, advantages, disadvantages I have discussed in this video? You can go and watch it. It will give you better understanding. But let me explain that why NSE might be a good bet, right? And how you should think about building positions on NSE. See, 2-3 phases, right? So number one, for example, a company when it IPOs in the Indian market, the general trend has been that IPO is damn pumped up. Okay. Mama Earth देख लो, right? Paytm देख लो, right? Even LIC देख लो, etc., etc. They started like this post IPO and then they crashed, and now people are just holding like a lot of losses. Let me just show it to you with an example, right? So for example, so let's take a look at LIC, right? So this is IPO, right? So here it IPO'd 826. Now it is at 791. It IPO'd in 2022. Okay. So 3 years negative returns. That's what you're making on LIC, right? Now, please note that this is IPO, right? These are almost IPO price, and most of the retail investors buy during IPO or around IPO. Okay. But if you're buying pre-IPO, then what happens? Then maybe you will get at a slightly more discounted levels. Can I show you an example? Yes. So for example, let's pick one of the recent IPOs that has happened, and it was Swiggy, right? So Swiggy, if you go and check, what would you notice? So here you would see that it IPO'd at 456. 456. Now, please go and watch this video. I have live bought Swiggy at 360. Okay. Now, what is the price right now? It is around 350. So you'll say, oh, Akshat, yeah, you incurred a loss. This, that, stuff. By 360 or 350, 345, mein, how much is the difference? And also, please consider the fact that it was here, right? So the point I'm trying to tell you is that in IPO, once the firm goes IPO, especially in a bullish market, it will just go up like this. There is a very high probability of that happening, and it becomes a slight problem. So a better approach is that you buy at least some quantity before IPO, right? And then you wait around in the public space, right? Let the price discovery happen. And if opportunity comes, you can add more. See, now some of you would say that, okay, Swiggy has also fallen and all that stuff. By Swiggy, in which market it has fallen? Where the market or index itself corrected by 15%. Small and mid cap index corrected by 25%. So if आप pre-IPO price से निकालोगे, which was at 360, 365, इसमें 25% if you give discount, then also one could say that this 360 price was a fairly valued price, right? At worst. Okay. So these are the three type of opportunities I'm buying in the sideways market. One, I'm buying certain index which are undervalued. Number two, I'm buying selected US stocks right now. And third is that I'm buying some unlisted companies. Now, NSE is not the only unlisted company I'm buying more. Now, again, I would encourage, if you're a serious investor, do check out my YouTube member community, do check out some of my courses. And if you want a deeper understanding on these topics, I would definitely encourage you to join these serious communities. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.